Real Madrid just learned a very simple lesson. If someone wins the Ballon d'Or, maybe don't boycott the ceremony. Because 2 years later, Madrid decided they actually wanted Rodri. And after weeks of trying to sign him, they finally got their answer. Yeah, Rodri was going to Spain. Just not to Madrid. He chose Barcelona. That probably wasn't how Mourinho imagined this ending. But here's where the story gets even better. City have now lost one of their most important players, while Barcelona have added Rodri to a midfield that was already packed. So Madrid aren't the only ones affected by this transfer. Rodri hasn't even played yet, and somehow he's already created problems at 3 different clubs. The rejection probably hurts a little more when you look at why Mourinho wanted Rodri in the first place. Because Real Madrid aren't exactly short of midfielders, they've already got loads of quality there, but most of it does something different. Valverde gives them ridiculous energy. Bellingham is much more dangerous when he's allowed to get closer to goal, and Tchouaméni is probably at his best when he's protecting the defence rather than trying to run the entire match. What Madrid still haven't really replaced is the guy who decides how fast everything happens. For years, Kroos did that almost without looking like he was trying. Madrid could be getting pressed, the game could be turning chaotic, and everyone around him could be running at full speed. Kroos would still look like he'd accidentally wandered into a Sunday kickabout. Then he'd play one pass and Madrid were out. That's the bit they're still missing. Rodri could have given them something very similar. Not because he plays exactly like Kroos, but because he can sit in the middle, take the ball when everyone else is under pressure, and make the game calm down. For Mourinho, that's incredibly useful. There will be matches where Madrid can attack quickly and let all that athleticism do the damage. But when a team turns up, sits deep and refuses to give them anything, somebody has to keep the ball moving without forcing things every 5 seconds. Rodri is very good at that. And after the World Cup, there wasn't much doubt left about whether the injuries had taken that away from him. He'd just gone through the biggest tournament in football looking completely in control. So Mourinho wasn't chasing Rodri because Madrid needed another superstar. He wanted him because this midfield still has one job nobody really does the way Rodri can. And now Barcelona have him instead. And from Rodri's side, the decision actually makes a lot of sense. Barcelona didn't really have to sell him on the football. He'd spent 7 years under Pep Guardiola. So the basic idea was already familiar. Keep the ball, control the middle, and don't panic just because someone starts pressing you. Rodri knows that world. Then there was the dressing room. He wasn't walking into a completely new group. A big part of Spain's World Cup winning team was already there, so he already knew a lot of the players and how they like to play. That matters more than people think. At 30, after everything he's already won with City, this probably wasn't about chasing the biggest contract anymore. It was about finding a place where he wouldn't need 6 months just to understand what everyone wanted from him. And Barcelona gave him that. Rodri even said the club suited his style and personality, which is probably the clearest explanation you need. From his point of view, Barca didn't look like some huge leap into the unknown. It offered football he already understood, a role that made sense and a dressing room full of players he'd already shared big moments with. So while Madrid may have had the bigger pull on paper, Barcelona probably felt easier to imagine himself in. And once you look at it like that, the decision stops feeling quite so shocking. The more interesting question is what happens now that he's there? Because Barcelona already had a midfield full of players expecting to start. And that brings us to the slightly uncomfortable part of this transfer. Where does everybody else play? Because Barcelona's midfield wasn't exactly empty before Rodri arrived. Pedri is one of the best midfielders in the world. Gavi is still there. Dani Olmo can play centrally. Frenkie de Jong has been an important player for years, and Marc Casado needs minutes if Barcelona actually want him to develop. Then they've just spent around 75 million euros on Rodri. He's not coming for the lovely weather. Rodri is going to play, and suddenly Flick has to fit all of this together. Pedri alongside Rodri makes almost too much sense. Pedri can move higher, find space between the lines, and worry less about what's happening behind him because there is now a Ballon d'Or winner standing there. Great for Pedri. potentially less great for Frenkie, because De Jong has spent years being one of the players Barcelona use to bring the ball out from deep. Rodri can now do a lot of that while also giving Flick more protection when possession is lost. That doesn't mean De Jong is suddenly useless or that Barcelona need to sell him. Far from it. But his place in the team isn't as obvious as it was before, and Casado has an even stranger problem. He's at the age where sitting on the bench every week doesn't really help anybody, but the guy directly in front of him has just signed until 2030. Good luck waiting that one out. This is the funny thing about signing someone as good as Rodri. Everybody celebrates when he walks through the door. Then training starts and half the midfield suddenly remembers there are only 11 places in the team. For Flick, that's a very nice problem to have. For the players who just moved one place down the queue, probably slightly less nice. And Barcelona were clearly willing to create that problem for a reason. And this is probably why Barcelona were happy to create that midfield traffic jam. Ever since Busquets left, they've been trying to find someone who can make the middle of the pitch feel under control again. Which, to be fair, is a pretty horrible job. Busquets wasn't quick, wasn't particularly strong, and occasionally looked like he was running through wet cement. Then he'd get the ball with 3 players around him and somehow Barcelona were attacking 5 seconds later. That's what they've missed. Not necessarily Busquets himself, but someone who can make the middle of the pitch feel under control. Flick's Barcelona can be brilliant without that. They can also be slightly terrifying to watch if you actually support them. The fullbacks go forward, midfielders start appearing around the box, and suddenly Barcelona have 6 or 7 players involved in an attack. Lose the ball at the wrong moment and, well, everyone start running backwards. Rodri changes that. He's spent years at Manchester City, standing behind attacks and working out where the danger is going to appear before it actually becomes dangerous. And when Barcelona have the ball, he gives them someone who doesn't panic when the opposition presses. That's probably the biggest difference. Rodri doesn't need to make the spectacular pass every time. Sometimes he'll take 2 touches, move the ball 10 yards, and Barcelona can start again. It doesn't look particularly exciting, neither did Busquets half the time. Then you notice the entire team plays better because he's there. Rodri also gives Flick things Busquets never really had. He's stronger in the air, more physical, and if someone leaves him 20 yards from goal, maybe don't. Manchester City learned that one. So Barcelona haven't spent 75 million euros trying to recreate Busquets? Exactly. They've bought someone who can do the job Barcelona have been missing while bringing a few things of his own, which sounds wonderful for Barca. For Manchester City, watching him do all of that in another shirt might be slightly less enjoyable. And this is where I feel slightly sorry for Manchester City. Only slightly. Because replacing Rodri sounds pretty simple until you actually try to name the replacement. City have already spent £116 million on Elliot Anderson, and he's a brilliant midfielder. But asking him to become Rodri is a bit unfair. For 7 years, Rodri wasn't just the guy standing in front of City's defence. He was the player Guardiola trusted whenever a match started getting uncomfortable. City could be under pressure and Rodri would still show for the ball. He could slow the game down when they needed control, and somehow he also became the guy who would appear outside the box whenever an important goal was needed. Apparently that was part of the job too. City found out how much they depended on him the hard way. Whenever Rodri disappeared from the team, their win rate dropped. And after that ACL injury in 2024, we got to see what City looked like when Rodri will fix it was no longer an available tactical plan. Not particularly fun. Now he's gone permanently. And this time Guardiola isn't there to figure it out either. Enzo Maresca has inherited a midfield that's going to have to learn how to function without the player who sat at the centre of it for most of the previous era. Anderson could become part of the answer, although City may be better off spreading Rodri's old job across several players instead of asking one man to copy him. That probably makes more sense because there aren't many 6'3" Ballon d'Or winning holding midfielders casually waiting for a phone call. But whatever Maresca does, City are going to look different. They almost have to. Rodri spent 7 years becoming so important to Manchester City that replacing him with one player was always going to be close to impossible. Barcelona don't have that problem. They just bought the original. And while Barcelona are trying to work out how to fit Rodri into an already crowded midfield, Madrid have the opposite problem. They still need the player they were trying to buy. Normally, missing out on a transfer is easy enough to move on from. You call the next agent, switch targets, and a few days later, everyone starts pretending the first guy was never really that important anyway. This one is a little harder, because Madrid weren't looking for just another midfielder. They wanted someone who could sit underneath all that power in midfield and control the game without taking anything away from Bellingham, Valverde or Tchouaméni. That's not exactly the easiest profile to find. Madrid could ask Tchouaméni to take on more of that responsibility. Maybe they do, but that also means asking him to become a different kind of midfielder, and I'm not sure changing the job description suddenly turns him into Rodri. So Mourinho has a choice to make. He can trust the midfield he already has and change how it works, or Madrid can go back into the market and start looking for someone else to do the job they wanted Rodri for. Neither option really makes the original problem disappear, and that's why losing him to Barcelona stings more than a normal failed transfer. Madrid didn't just miss out on the name, they still have the problem that made them want him. So after all of this, did Barcelona actually win? Probably. But 75 million euros for a 30-year-old midfielder isn't exactly risk-free. Rodri has already had the serious knee injury. He's had other fitness problems since then, and Barcelona have given him a contract until 2030. That's the part of this deal you can question. 4 years is a long commitment when the player is already 30. The annoying thing for anyone making that argument is what Rodri just did at the World Cup. He captained Spain to the trophy and finished the tournament as its best player, so apparently nobody told him he was supposed to be getting old. And if Barcelona get anything close to that version of Rodri, the price starts looking very different. This was already a very good team. What Flick needed was someone who could make all that attacking football a little safer without taking away what makes Barcelona dangerous in the first place. Rodri can do that, and Barcelona's biggest worry might simply be whether his body lets him keep doing this for another 4 years. If it does, 75 million euros could end up looking like money very well spent, especially if Madrid have to spend those 4 years watching him in Clásicos. Which brings us back to where this whole thing started. Next time the Ballon d'Or invitation arrives, maybe just go. But I want to know what you think. Did Rodri make the right choice? Or will Barcelona eventually regret spending 75 million euros on a 30-year-old midfielder? And more importantly, how annoyed are Real Madrid fans right now? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this one, subscribe.